this episode, I interview Scott Sewell from Microsoft to discuss his red shoelaces and the fact that Power BI is not rocket surgery. Yeah, you heard that right. Just a personal note, it takes a lot to produce these shows, and I would really appreciate your support. If you like the show, can you please leave a comment on iTunes by going to nz365guy.com/iTunes. To review the show notes for this episode, please go to nz365guy.com/40. I'd like to thank the generous contribution from our sponsor, Kingsway Soft. Kingsway Soft is a leading integration solution provider offering software solutions that make data integration affordable and painlessly easy. Thousands of enterprise clients from over 80 countries and regions rely on Kingsway Soft to integrate data with various business systems in order to drive their business efficiency and fully leverage their information assets. And Kingsway Soft now works with CDS and Power Apps. Kingsway Soft is a leading provider of Microsoft Dynamics integration software, including Dynamics 365, CRM, AX, NAV, GP, SL, as well as many other applications. Hi everyone, I'm here with Scott Sewell to discuss his role as a global black belt at Microsoft. What is a global black belt and how does this translate into Dynamics 365? As a 25-year veteran of software implementations, Scott has worked with Dynamics 365 for customer engagement, the Microsoft Business Intelligence suite of products, and has demonstrated expertise in a variety of technical and consultative areas, both within the partner channel for internal and customer projects and externally to the broader Microsoft Dynamics community. For 9 consecutive years, Scott has been awarded the MVP in the Microsoft Business Applications arena, but when he joined Microsoft, he lost it. Scott, welcome to the show.
All went away. It all went away.
It all went away.
Yeah.
So no more. Scott, it's been a long time happening. We've talked about doing this podcast for probably, 10 months even before you went into Microsoft, and
I think so.
Yeah, so finally it's happening, and
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed hearing the conversations you've had with. I was listening to the one you had your most recent one with the training, and I learned so much about functional or availability things of training that's available from within my own company. It was really useful, and I've enjoyed the personalities that you've had. You've had a really nice cross section of people that I haven't heard from before, which I've really enjoyed.
It's so good.
I'm honored to be I'm honored to be on your list.
It's good to have you on. I think, have I known you now for 9 years, maybe?
No, it's
8
been,
years? 8 years, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, so it was since the time you started as a MVP.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's part of the fun of that, being a part of that group, is that I feel like I really have good friends across, when I was in the partner channel, in competitors, literally around the world. And it's the camaraderie and also the mutual support and the enthusiasm for the whole platform is just contagious to me. And it's fun to be a part of something where you have other people of like mind that, everybody's rooting for everybody else's success in the whole process, which I always enjoyed. So yeah, it's been a part, and that was actually when I took the role with Microsoft. That was one of the little things like, I don't get to hang out with my friends as much now, but we do all get to catch up at the conferences, and so I guess we'll have one. We got some conferences coming up. Hopefully, we all see each other again at those.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to the Serum UG Summit?
I will not. I don't think I'm scheduled to be at the UG Summit.
You're just doing Ignite?
I'm going to do Ignite, and I'm also doing the Digital Transformation Academy out in Vegas. So I've got those two on my agenda.
Gotcha. We'll have to say that this episode will actually publish after Ignite, so you would have done Ignite by the time this comes to air.
So Ignite was wonderful.
Yeah.
Just hot and humid. Let's just say that. I know it was hot and humid, and there's probably thunderstorms at some point during the time in Orlando.
Excellent. So about 8-9 months ago, you handed in your notice at Hitachi and joined Microsoft. And part of that process, as we've already said, when you go into Microsoft, you lose your MVP. That must have been a hard decision, or probably when I look at myself, I think that would be the hardest thing I would want to give up, and going into Microsoft to lose my MVP.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly not anything to do with losing a quote unquote title or losing a designation. It's really just the camaraderie of being a part of that
The
group.
community. Yeah.
The community. I've enjoyed over the years some of the mailing list and the email storms, and people getting fired up about different things, and but also the community, and like we've said before, just the mutual support and encouragement that we tend to have within the community, both within the MVP side and also a little broader community. But within that group, there was a certain amount of camaraderie, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So how are you finding the change now at Microsoft? As a lot of people say, you're joining the mothership. How are you finding it?
I've been assimilated into the board, but yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. There's obviously, I had a great experience with Hitachi, and before the acquisition with Customer Effective, and it was a great experience for me. I enjoyed it, and I've got good friends there, but I was looking for kind of a different type of challenge than what Hitachi was focused on at that point. And it's been everything I had hoped for to be able to join into Microsoft. I've got one of the specific things that I think people will coach you on if you ever choose to investigate a role at Microsoft is be aware of who you're going to report to. And one of the things that sold me on this particular role in this particular time was the person I was going to be reporting to, Heather King King Hall. And she's fantastic, been in the channel in the space for a very long time, terrific manager. So that's been a great part of the process, is just who you get to surround yourself with. And the fun part is I now get to work with people that I worked with as both colleagues and as competitors. In fact, I was just working on a deal with a former competitor, but I knew how strong and how talented this person was, and I got to feed them additional help and cheer them on. So it's been good. I've enjoyed that.
Fantastic. So just to clarify the listeners, that Heather Hall that he works for now is not the Heather Hall he used to work with.
That's right.
When he was at Customer Effective, who we've had on the show a couple of times.
That's right. Different Heather Hall. But yeah, so it's been good.
So tell me, just for the listeners that are kind of might not have seen you across the MVP community over the last period of time, tell us about yourself, your family, what you do kind of outside of work interest-wise, and then basically how you originally got into Dynamics.
Sure. So I guess I don't know how far back I go. I was bored at a very early age. I don't know whose line that was originally, but I was. Currently I live in New York City. Married. My wife is Amy, and I, just the two of us, and we have a fantastic time here. We've enjoyed living in the city tremendously. And we've been married for 10 years, almost 11, and coming up on 11, and it's been great. I grew up obviously from my accent, you probably can tell I didn't grow up in New York City. I grew up in the southern part of the U.S., in Tennessee. So I grew up in a small town. The town itself, in fact, I can probably say there's absolutely fewer people in my hometown than live on my block in New York City.
Wow.
Big dramatic difference. So, it's tremendous contrast between the two, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. And it gave me I enjoyed growing up in the South and that part of the country. And then also, but I've enjoyed the contrast way more than I expected. I came up to New York City on a project for Customer Effective at that point, and was supposed to be here I think I was supposed to be here for 3 weeks, maybe a month. And then that rolled into 3 months, which then rolled into 6 months, which then rolled into 2 years. And then at some point they just said, I was flying back and forth every weekend from Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I just think, okay, that first month I was here, I was staying in a hotel near Times Square, and I said, well, I'm obviously never coming back here, so I might as well take advantage of everything I can. So I would just stay here on the weekends, and I went to see a bunch of Broadway shows. I went to the Statue of Liberty. I went to the Guggenheim Museum. I tried to do everything I possibly could just to take care of it all while I was here. And so I did that. I actually was like, actually, this is kind of fun. I enjoy this, but there's no way I'm ever going to live here. This is nuts. And so I was on this project. He's doing well. Wound up meeting Amy, and after meeting Amy, we'd been dating and we started planning to get married. And one of the conversations was, what happens when the end of this project comes up? Where do you live? And I wanted to eventually move back to Tennessee or South Carolina, and she wanted to live here in New York. So we compromised and live in New York. So it's been great. It's been a tremendous experience. How I got into Dynamics was obviously by accident, I think, like everybody. I started with a company called Onyx out of Bellevue, and Onyx was run by, the South Carolina office was run by John Gravely, who I had known previously at a company in South Carolina. And so John had hired me at Onyx. We worked together for about 6-8 months. And then when 9/11 happened, the projects we were on all dried up. And so I was laid off. I'd been there less than a year. But so I went and did some independent consulting and some things along that line, different opportunities I had. But gradually then John left, and he and Jeremy, who was also at Onyx, they started C360 and invited me to come back and be a consultant for them. So I joined the two of them, and I was doing some CRM consulting, and I helped. The funny thing was, my first project was a CRM 1.0 to 1.1 upgrade for none other than Brett Thompson, who then went on to start. Yeah, totally. Wow. I mean, talk about inbred, this whole organization. But I get to know Rhett through that process. And anyway, we went on, and eventually I moved on when John kind of went a different direction on terms of becoming more of a product organization, and I really wanted to stay on the consulting and services side. I then joined Customer Effective as their 6th or 7th employee, and had a good long run with them through the acquisition to Hitachi. And yeah, so it's been fun. I've enjoyed it very much, mostly because, early on with CRM, I had prior to that, I tried to, one crazy thing, I tried to build my own software for related to a casino application that I had thought of, and for maintenance, and I got into it. I realized how much I didn't know, and I realized how much there was a need for business software, but it was really hard to build unless you've got, mad development skills, which I don't. That's not me. And so I started this process, but as I got into it, I found out that, within CRM, even in the 1.0, 1.2 days, it could function as kind of sly sort of business application, even beyond just contacts and companies. You could start building these little things off the side when we eventually got the ability to create our own entities, which was revolutionary. Added new fields, and suddenly we were acting as a very rudimentary business application platform. That's the early days of XRM. And it was great because I felt like I could provide the value that, a development shop could do in some ways, in a very, in a restricted way, but I could provide some solutions to customers very quickly without them having to go through a huge cycle of, investing in a whole application. I could mock it up and build it and deliver it and kind of feel like a little hero there for a moment. And so, it's been one of those things that kind of feeds one of my passions, or one of the things that really lights me up, is being able to look at a problem and come up with a way to solve it without breaking the bank, or without, spending months and months and months. Let's try to prototype an example. And if this works, great. If it's kind of on the direction, maybe we invest in going deeper into a more complex solution, but let's think about what we can do to solve the problem first. So that's been fun.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's quite a journey, and I can't believe, can't get over the different names, that have been around our industry for some time.
Yeah.
Just, how you were connected with them all. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun.
So Red socks. I've seen a lot of photos with you in red socks.
Oh, the red
Yeah,
shoelaces.
the red shoelaces. That's what I'm thinking of. How did that come about?
You know what? It was a random. I bought a pair of shoes and they had red laces in them, and whatever. It was they were. My wife thought they were sharp, and I thought, okay, yeah, I like them. So I picked them up and I got them. And I was at a customer site in Alabama, and the customer was, I mean, it was totally a nice customer, really great person. So we're having there, and he looked down and he sees the red laces on my shoes, and he goes, "So what do the red laces stand for? What do they mean?" I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. They
Yeah,
came with the
yeah.
shoes. But in jest, I told him, I said, they mean I'm willing to spill blood for the success of this project. And he kind of looked at me, and I didn't crack a smile, and I thought, okay, he's either going to have me escorted out, or we're going to have a successful
Yeah.
project. And fortunately, we had a successful project. So, but anyway, so I got beyond that. Joel started giving me grief. Joel Lindstrom started giving me grief about him. He kind of mocked me about him. So of course, I doubled down on him and bought a red shoelaces for other shoes. So anyway, that was the way that got started.
So let's move on and discuss a bit around this global black belt title that you have. So, in martial arts, when we look at that, it's a sign of somebody that steadily increased through their belts and got to a certain level based on their knowledge and skill. What's a global black belt, and, what's involved in that role?
Sure. First off, global black belt. I mean, it was incredibly impressive. My 7-year-old nephew. He was very excited about me being. He thought that meant I was something of a ninja, and I never corrected that. I never changed his mind. I figured I'm happy for my nephew to be impressed like that.
Exactly.
But really, global black belt. I think it started with a different product group, maybe Exchange, and in the technical pre-sales portion of the process of the organization, there were a group of people that would talk to customers and work out through the questions of the technical details in the pre-sales process to let them know how they would address certain technical challenges and how they could apply different parts of the application to solve different parts of the customer's problem or whatever they were working with. And there were a handful of people that tended to have very specialized knowledge about certain areas. And it became a group that they referred to them as the black belts because they had this sort of advanced, specialized, specific knowledge about this. It was beyond what the general technical sales professionals did for Excel. I mean, they all had great diversified experience, but this group they had specialty experience, and they've sort of taken that model and moved it into other teams, and into the Dynamics team, they've added it as a group within the technical sales professionals. It is not a designation. It's not a certification. It's not an award. It's not it's not a knighthood or some sort of honorary title. It's just a role that I'm in, specifically around. It's kind of those for instance, within the dynamic side, we've got technical sales professionals out there that have really strong, broad product knowledge and experience, and so during the sales process, they're working directly with the customer and helping them out with that. But as you know, Mark, there's no way everybody can know everything about every piece of dynamics or the whole environment around it. So they've sort of partitioned off part of the team and said, okay, we want you to focus on the sales process and enablement things and knowing what all the ISVs have in this area. For instance, if you're in a sales time, they're going to know what territory alignment pieces and things that go outside of the CPQ type applications that might be added to it, or more advanced types of pieces you could add to Dynamics. In my area, in the customer service area, in general, we're focused on things that are more advanced, like call center applications, understanding telephony, understanding USD, understanding how this applies to both call centers and then more generally to the customer service workload. There's others that are focused on field service and others focused on project service, et cetera. So it's really a kind of a subspecialty area within the technical sales team. It's not it's as much as it would be fun. I'm letting my nephew think it's not an elitist sort of a thing. And I would probably it's also kind of the way I refer to when I would get introduced in sales projects when I was Hitachi, and they would say, "Well, Scott's an MVP," and I would usually kind of qualify that because I'd kind of say, "Well, my standard joke was, well, MVP doesn't mean most smartest," and I would, and sometimes I would laugh. Some people would laugh, sometimes not, but I'd say it doesn't mean most smartest. It means in some ways most vocal. It's really somebody who champions the platform and talks to the community and provides and helps enable the rest of the community by sharing and looking ahead and trying to describe that and trying to give value back into the community. And similarly, the GBB team is focused on both helping advance efforts, but also to say we're here to try to help enable the rest of the TSP community, the technical sales community, so that they know more about the things and help them become more and more advanced on the areas that we can help with. And for instance, my area tends to be currently right now, I tend to focus on things like, of course, Power BI, which I've had a passion for a long time, in helping other TSPs get up to speed in Power BI, and sometimes just building dashboards for specific workload cases that they come across. Also started in on Power Apps lately, and how that can help solve some problems that customers bring to the TSPs, and the TSPs say, I know a couple of ways I might solve this, but let me talk to somebody and get some other ideas in. And so I'm here to help enable them on those things.
Gotcha. So you've thrown out a few 3-letter acronyms there, and I was always in the same position with MVP. I'd be with a salesperson out on a call, and they'd go, and he's an MVP, and the client would just be blank, looking back like, so what? No kind of qualification. So we've covered global black belts, and you've said GBB. We've looked at technical sales professionals, TSPs, and the other one is right? SSP, right? Is SSP still in play on a Dynamics deal from Microsoft's point of view?
They are. In fact, we're taking the approach now is starting to blend a lot more, and they're referring to it as a swarm approach, meaning that as we get into a deal that's larger and more complex, you bring together people with TSPs, GBBs, SSP, the solution sales professionals, the AE, the actual just salesperson, bring us all together, get us in a room or a virtual room, and everybody tries to contribute what they think they might be able to solve the problem for the customer. And it's not always, thankfully, we're not relegated to just, you can provide a technical piece to the solution and the other person can only provide a business case solution. We really try to feed off of each other's experience and, I saw this in this deal. This might be useful to the customer, or can we expand the customer's vision for the solutions we can offer by sort of, challenging their assumptions. So it's not as hierarchical as maybe at one time it was, but it's been a fun process to be a part of the teams that I've been a part of. Most the people I've worked with have not been territorial or resistant to. I had one person, but that's all right. But most everybody's like, "Hey, great! What can you bring to the table? Here's what I've got. Here's what I can help with." And so it's been fun.
Interesting. As in, there's been this massive trend, in the last 5 or so years where a sales role is no longer limited to just one person, but it's really very much a team, as you say, a swarm approach to bringing in the expertise right across the organization, to lead to bear on opportunity development.
As it should be. And as a result, I wind up learning a lot more. Every time I have a chance to interact with somebody off of a completely different team, I'm like, thumbs up, I'm ready to go, because they're going to bring something to that process that I would have never thought of. And as soon as I learn something new, I'm like, immediately that's going in my tool belt. I learned that one. I'm I'm going to reuse that. I'm going to claim it was my
Yeah,
idea
yeah.
next time it comes around.
Nice, nice. So, before going in and taking this role of the GBB role, you were much broader and, you're like what we talked about, you're across the entire thing. I know you'd got heavily into Power BI there, as well as, the rest of the dynamic stack, if you like, or the first party apps that we know of them now. Did you find that you went through a steep learning curve going into Microsoft more than, if you like, what you had been on for let's say, the last 2 years in your Dynamics career?
I'd say the learning curve was really understanding the organization and, of course, acronyms. That was really the learning curve for me, and it continues. And learning this group focuses on this acronym references a group that's focused on an industry vertical, or this acronym references a group that's focused on a geographic region. This team has these goals, this team has this goal. So learning that and learning a little bit about different people's motivations in terms of, of course, everybody's going to be motivated to promote and deliver the software that they are charged with promoting and delivering, right? That's totally reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But also understanding where they're coming from helps me better know, I'm not trying to force a square peg into a round hole when I'm asking them to participate in a project. I want to understand that what their motivation, what's useful to them, et cetera. So it's been good. That's part of the learning curve. The other learning curve has been just the way in which an organization as large as Microsoft operates is very different from an organization, like I said, when I worked for C360, which was 3 of us, maybe 4 of us at one point, and then went to Customer Effective, which is 8, and then gradually into Hitachi, which, even though Hitachi's a ginormous organization, we were still in our territory, our patch. We were maybe 100 and 150, 200 people that I would have some sort of interaction with within the organization. But now into a global organization like Microsoft, there's differences in the way, just the structure, the infrastructure around it, and also I'm not going to call it, I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging it, but there is a lot of overhead red tape or whatnot that's involved. And I certainly don't want that to sound like I'm disparaging it, because I'm actually quite impressed with the efforts that Microsoft goes through on some things that when you're a team of 8 people, you sort of pay lip service to. But when you're an organization of 100,000, I don't know what the number,
130, I think that
130,000.
Yeah.
You have to be a lot more explicit and put a lot more effort into things like diversity, security, motivation, and clarity. You're just exposed to a lot more possibilities for misunderstanding if you're not very clear and vocal about that thing. So that's been an interesting process for me. I have to go through tons of watching these videos of little scenarios that play out, that people describe their various ethical scenarios, and little videos that describe, here's how you might approach this. Here's the resources if you need to know, if you find yourself in a situation like this, here's the group and within Microsoft you can reach out to that can help you with this, which I'm quite impressed with. I certainly didn't expect it. It's nice to be a part of an organization that is invested so heavily in the ethics and diversity and values that they espouse, are not just paid lip service. They put a lot of money into promoting those internally and ensuring that everybody understands, tries to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah. I reckon that, Microsoft as a whole turned a corner back in Bill Gates' time when, they said we're going to make Windows the most secure operating system out there.
Right.
And, everything's going to come with security built in to start, not to turn it on later. And they've gone on that journey from there. And like any massive organization needs to have that kind of rigor and robustness in place. Otherwise, a decent legal suit would take them out. And, and now, not so much today, but, with the growth from that point on, they've, built us that solid base and integrity. You know, I've always been blown away at the Microsoft partner conferences, just the level of integrity. You know, the head of the legal counsel, when, you know, he speaks and stuff, it's phenomenal how they have their customers absolutely front and center, best interest, and, you know, the security around it. But anyhow,
doesn't mean we don't make mistakes.
But
it doesn't mean,
no.
But there's a value to at least being constantly reminded of, we want to participate in these opportunities in as ethical a manner as we can. Ethically, we want to hold ourselves to a higher standard than, you know, maybe an organization that doesn't have as much visibility on them would have.
Exactly.
Not to say that I'm not disparaging anybody's, thing, but when you have that much visibility on you, you have to be absolutely dead certain that that everybody's marching to the same tune, and you're all know that you have to, if you get into things where you aren't experienced with it, the organization needs to make sure that individuals don't make mistakes that reflect on the organization.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
It's been good.
Good. Can you give us a breakdown of your responsibilities as, in your role? And I kind of want you to take a lens of about a month. So rather than go too granular, kind of, a month in the life of, your role. What does it include? What's it entail?
Yeah. So first and foremost, our responsibility is to support the sales process so that as potential customers come through and are evaluating CRM, our Dynamics 365 platform, and the surrounding technologies, that as they're going through their evaluation process, that we're there to support the team that's working with the customer. That I'm not typically the front person in meeting with the customer and leading the effort. Sometimes I will be, but I'm not typically the one leading the effort to deliver that. But I am critically important to support the team and be a part of the team that delivers that value to the customer and says, hey, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, here's how we understand your problem. Here's what we can do to help bring solutions to you and help you understand, help you solve the problems that you face, as well as maybe even look beyond those problems and look at other things within your organization that we might be able to solve with these same technologies. So that would be the first, the sales support of that is the kind of number one priority. The second priority under that would be, and it kind of falls in the behavior still happens at the same time. The second part would be enabling the rest of my team, either both the other GBBs as well as all TSPs, enabling them by teaching or sharing or building assets that can be shared with the rest of the team, doing little informal, webinars or jumping on conference calls and saying, by the way, here's a solution we built for this customer. Here's how we might be able to deliver that for other customers. So I'm doing a lot of that. Also doing that, of course, with the conference season. We had both this year. I've spoken at Ready, Ignite, the Digital Transformation Academy in Vegas. So I've got, quite a bit and also participated in the Business Application Summit but I didn't have a speaking role there. So anyway, it's a enablement kind of a role. Somewhere in there, those two items cover the bulk of what I'm focused on.
So what do you enjoy the most? I
think it's within that, it's that enablement portion, which I get to play in both roles. I enjoy the aspect of saying, hey, I've got this cool idea. I learned this from Ulrich, or I learned this from another customer, or here's some experience. Let me show you something that I can teach you how to do that will help you and make you a superstar in whatever project comes up. Next time this comes up, you don't need to call me because you're going to already be upskilled in this area. That to me is extremely rewarding when somebody wants to pick up and learn a new skill that I might be able to transfer to them. I don't know why. Maybe it's a little bit, it's kind of overblown for me, because it's like I really get excited about somebody who's willing to spend an hour on a conference call with me and kind of walk through the steps of how do you do this. so much more than if somebody calls me and says, I need a dashboard for X. And can you get that out for me? I mean, I'm certainly able to do that, turn that around, and I'm happy when I get to do that and they come back and they go, that was helpful. The customer responded to that. They enjoy, that was helpful in our conversation. That's a big plus when somebody comes back and says, yeah, the work that you did was helpful, but I really enjoy that teaching
Yeah,
aspect.
excellent. Excellent. That's so cool. That's so cool. So, what part, if I put my partner hat on, I have engaged heavily with solutions or SSPs and TSPs and, across the roles I've had. GBBs were really just starting to become a thing, when I took a year off. And are you engaging in partners specifically as a GBB? I know the TSPs, SSPs, etc. will be, and account managers, etc. But does your role ever touch or engage with partners in a pursuit of a sales opportunity?
Yeah, typically only in conjunction with the TSPs and SSPs that are involved. I'm typically only being added as a component to that team rather than being the lead of that team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are a couple of cases where just because of old friendships or long-time relationships, a partner has called and said, can you give me some direction on this? Or do you mind sitting through and watching this demo? And can you give us pointers on that? Totally happy to do that. But that's more of a based on personal relationships than structure of the role.
So tell me, what's one of the most challenging sales you've participated in? And it can be within Microsoft or, in your partner side, and what were the kind of outcomes, etc.?
I was involved in one, let's think, I guess it was several months ago. It was when I was fairly new to the company, and somebody said, we need a dashboard for this. And so I'm happy to jump in and be able to try to provide something I had in there. The challenge with this particular customer kind of reflects something I see, and I recognize it because I recognize it in myself, and I'll explain what I mean by that. The customer had been using their particular piece of software, which was homegrown. They had built their own custom CRM/sales management process in their own application, and the application there's code in there that was 30 years old.
Wow.
Evolved over from I think an Access database originally, and it got upscaled a little bit, and then it was evolved into some Visual Basic and ASP, and it just kept, and it turned into this Frankenstein that literally only a handful of people could manage. And those people said, they just didn't want to do anything to it because it was like, if I touch it, it's going to break. But the person that had run the organization, sort of played the role of a product owner. If you think about Scrum perspective, they played the product owner role, was totally enthusiastic, extremely excited about how this tool had continued to evolve, and it had so many features added to it, and look at all the things it can do. And this is how I use it every day. I use this and I use this and I everything this. There was a bit of myopic perspective on that. And this is where I recognize my own perspective too sometimes. There's a bit of myopic perspective on it in that they had made this thing so complicated and so quote unquote functional that it had become unusable for anyone that didn't have 30 years of experience with it.
Wow.
It was, and so what happened is gradually, and this is a type of role, a type of organization where you see very high turnover. And so within an organization where you have super high turnover, fewer and fewer people actually bothered to learn anything other than the first two screens of the application and said, forget it, I'm not going any further than just what I have to do.
It was for a call center, wasn't it?
Well, it wasn't. It was a sales organization.
Wow. Because, man, what you just described is I've been on a similar project, and it was a call center with the most Frankenstein-y system that built at acquired companies. And what you were describing was like, my gosh, it could have been the same customer, just the other part of the world.
The funny thing is these are tragically not unique type of situations. But the truth is, it was hard to work with this person who was so personally invested in this software because they saw how it was their baby. And you don't want to step in and say your baby's ugly, right? You don't want to do that. You want to go, wow, I see how much this has enabled what you're doing. How about if we maybe provide a simpler path that allows more people to take advantage of a tool that can solve problems, as opposed to it being something that's really only the top most elite. You have to kind of put it in you have to flatter them a bit, because they've put a ton of work into this. But you want to say, only, this right now, only the most elite of the elite are able to use this to its full value. What if we made something that maybe has 100% of the most valuable aspects of it, but is easier to use? And so it was a bit of a challenge in that process. And I was working with an SSP who was just phenomenal at navigating that with the customer. He built a lot of trust with the customer. The customer recognized that this person was, had all the best intentions and was trying to solve the problem with them, as opposed to definitely was not trying to work around them, but was also trying to coach them a little bit through, hey, let go just a little bit, and maybe we can get more people successful in the organization that can benefit from the leadership that you provided. So that was a little challenging, and I think that comes back to this idea from a technology perspective. We can get extremely obsessed with, oh, look at this really cool thing. Look at the shiny toy that I've got, right? I love this feature. Oh, look at this. You can click. If you do this, you click here and do this and this. Suddenly you've got this amazing thing. Well, we can
democrat.
Yeah, we can get totally excited about those really super, and it's important to know what those things are. But don't forget that the object is not building a piece of software. The object is solving a problem. And if your problem is, and if you're trying to build if your object is building a piece of software, then be honest about it. But if you're honest, if your object is trying to build a solution for people, honestly, the simpler version, fewer features equals better usability. As long as those features are the right features, you can build something. I use an example a lot of times when I'm working with a customer in this early process, and this goes back to Hitachi too, is they can say, well, we want everything that we had in the previous version plus a few things else, right? Whoa. And of course the salesperson's usually, yeah, sounds great. We'll do everything. It's just the existing product plus, I'm like, whoa. No. Time out. Let's talk about this. And I use the example of MP3 players. And you and I are old enough to remember when MP3 players came on the market for the first time. And when they first came on the market, one of the first MP3 players that I had was Diamond Rio, not to be confused with the music, the band, but it was a Diamond MP3 player that came in a variety of colors. It had all these buttons on it. It could record. It had a radio in it, and had a number of the really complex, very huge number of features available to it for the time. It was crazy. Very much driven by an engineering perspective. John Gravely walks in one day with his brand new iPod. It's white. It has one button and a little click wheel.
Yeah.
It has a black and white menu that's very simple. But man, it was so much. That thing took off like a rocket because it was easy to use. People grasp it immediately. It took care of the problems that they were trying to, the problem that it was trying to solve. It did it brilliantly. And I think sometimes we wind up getting fixated on how complicated can we make this thing, or how many things can we shove into this poor little application. We're going to shove everything into it and then put it in front of a customer and think, one of my customers one time was like, we just want to have a wow factor. We want to have a wow factor. And I was like, yeah, we're going to have a wow. They're going to go, wow, that's hard to use. So, you want to be careful about that process. Anyway, you can tell I get wound up about that topic.
Hey, that customer that we were originally chatting about there, did they move forward or did they cancel out?
They actually have moved forward. It's a multi-million-dollar project, so it's a long sales cycle. They're still in process. But one of the pieces that
Good.
actually solved that or came through for that was it was definitely not trying to end run that person. That person we've been very clear of trying to make sure that we respect the hard work that person's done. But one of the things we did was through this Power BI dashboard that I built, we added that as a part of the project. That was not something this person had asked for because this person, that was not really anything that would help them do their job. But what we did is said, Dynamics is a platform where a lot of really good business effort goes into. There's a lot of hard work that goes in there, a lot of information that's being, the sausage is being made, right? A lot of effort in there, and there's a lot of data in there. Let's try to surface that data in a way that maybe is useful to your leadership team so that they can see what's in your sales process without having to get down and dirty and get their hands dirty working inside the sales application. So we did that. We started surfacing the data up and saying, here's some trends, here's some buying patterns for the customer that we see within your data. And honestly, none of it was rocket surgery. Most of it was fairly straightforward information, but the difference was we could do that with Power BI in days or hours, whereas and then also make it flexible and interactive and make it adjustable on the fly. Whereas with the other application, the one that had been built over 30 years, it was so complex and interlocked that you want a report, you sketch out your report, make all your parameters and define what it is. 6 weeks later, you might get that report. If you need a change, it's going to be another 2 weeks before you get a change order through. So
Yeah, exactly.
What we did was we basically said, here, let's move the value up the chain a bit and give other people in the organization visibility into the value that you're building inside your application or inside your sales organization. And he saw that, and rightfully so. He saw that as somebody, we were respecting the hard work he was doing, and also giving him an easy way to show off the hard work that they were doing to his leadership team, who in the past had been like, send me a spreadsheet, because I don't want to get too involved. And so he was duplicating a lot of work. Anyway, it actually has changed the conversation a bit, and it's moving it forward.
Nice. Good outcome. If I could get you to become a prophet for a moment and look to the future, you've been in, this environment for a while now, and I'm talking about your Dynamics career. We've seen a separation of the first-party apps away from the core platform. We've seen that the core platform move into Azure. We've seen now the Microsoft Power Platform coming to the fore, which has elements of what we would have considered in the past XRM, but with so much more. Where do you see, I suppose my question is, do you see kind of first-party apps continuing to grow and expand, or do you see that the Microsoft Power Platform is really where we're going to see a massive amount of opportunity grow out of? And I'm like looking at it from if you take what we traditionally work with as CRM, let's say the sales, Dynamics 365 for sales, apart from a little tweaking here and there and, some intelligence and stuff built in, the dial hasn't moved really on what, a sales platform has been, for the last 10 or so years.
Yeah.
So what's your future look like or if you could prophesy the future, what do you think would be happening in, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
You're trying to get me to break my NDA, aren't you?
No NDA stuff. Absolutely not. I hadn't even thought of that.
No. I think if you read the tea leaves, we're seeing the platform is suddenly becoming this moving forward, as landmass, this continental shift. We're seeing this whole thing start moving forward, and things like Flow and Power Apps and the Power BI are one of the big motivators is saying, let's make sure those things work with the Dynamics platform or this, the CDS platform and forward. And we've got, there's efforts that it used to, we were treated as a side project many years ago. You and I have been in this space for a long time, and Dynamics was treated as, oh yeah, this other thing over there on the far side, right? We didn't get the respect, even though we were actually delivering some really cool value to customers, we weren't treated as we weren't Excel, we weren't PowerPoint, we weren't Exchange, but the shift has changed dramatically, and I'm seeing it both externally and what the communication is from James Phillips and down through the organization, and also internally, I'm seeing things that I'm being invited in to say, would you review this? Here's a direction we're going, or we're considering this direction. How would you or how would your customers respond to this? And the pattern is so obvious and consistent that Dynamics and this as a platform, and whether it's Common Data Service plus the Power Apps and Flow, all moving forward together very, very deliberately, and the interoperability with those, as well as being a consistent development deployment solution it's so exciting, because I think back to my early days of my 1.0 and 1.2, my 1.0 and 1.2 versions of CRM, where I was doing upgrades. And when we first got that opportunity to add brand new entities or add attributes that weren't out of the box, it was like, whoa, I can solve problems that Microsoft has never heard of before. And that was one of the things that lit me up in the early days about how I could solve some problems. And now it's just evolving, and I feel like suddenly, and I think within the community, our expansion and excitement about XRM, XRM was an exciting platform, but still it was treated as a quote unquote development platform. So that the expectation was, I'm happy for you to have some forms over data. That's cute. I'm glad you can do that. But if you really want to do serious work, you've still got to fire up Visual Studio and write some C# code and bring that in. And we've got all the hooks and all that's in place. Go have fun with that if you'd like. But it wasn't really, there was still a gap between that and a non-development, what they call the citizen developer. That ought to be a drinking game now, that every time somebody says citizen developer. But it's shifted over to that group that says, look, there are business solutions that we can provide and solve real problems, and we don't need to hire a long tail team of people who are going to do hard work for for a month and build this, and then sit around and wonder what they're going to do for the rest of the week, the rest of the year. Build this, put people who deal with it in an everyday space, give them the tools that allow them to do that. The same thing that's happened over years with Excel, where you had Excel was this original thing, and it was accountants or whoever was going to use that. But gradually over time, it became that more and more people said, oh, look, I can do this really cool thing with Excel. I was listening to the Sean Tabor and the Power BI guys, or Power Apps guys. Yeah, so I was listening to them, and they had a guy on from Microsoft, and for the life of me, I can't think of his name all of a sudden. But he was a teacher.
He
was a teacher in the classroom, and he saw the ability, and he was really connecting the dots. He was focused on, how do I teach kids these new concepts? I think some of the concepts were in math orientation. How do I teach kids these concepts? And let me focus on how I teach them. And by the way, let me grab this tool over here. It can help me do that, but I'm going to focus on how to teach. And to me, that was brilliant, because I think that's what the focus should be. I'm focused on a problem. Here's a tool set. I'm going to pull in what I need out of the tool set, but I'm going to focus on getting the problem solved, as opposed to, hey, look at this tool set I've got. Let me try to find something I can shove this into. So look at the problem and the solution first, and then this toolkit is right there for you.
So good. Scott, it's been great to have you on the show. Listen, I'm going to run through a few quick-fire questions with you to wrap up, and these are not specific to Dynamics. It is more about your life in general. So first of all, what motivates you?
Motivates me? I think probably I enjoy that aspect of being able to teach, being able to enable somebody else, help them get excited about the platform. That takes place both inside of Microsoft with the Dynamics and outside of Microsoft. I love getting a chance to help somebody pick up a new skill and learn it and own it for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are you excited about right now?
I'm actually building a house. So
nice.
Yeah,
That's
so
so cool.
it's a long-term project. It's probably a year out or more, but we've gone
Yeah,
through the
yeah.
process of we've got the drawings, we've got a builder, we've got a lot. We're starting the process,
Wow.
and this is still that this is
So
still
much fun.
the early dating phase of the process. I'm about to get into the part where I have to write a lot of checks and make a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
decisions on
yeah,
what type of light switch defines me as a person. That all the little
yeah.
details on that is going to drive me crazy. But that's a process right now,
So
and I'm
cool.
excited about that.
Nice. What do people never ask you that you kind of wish they did?
Never asked me that I wish they did. Probably around my experience and advice, not necessarily advice, but let me share what I've done around, honestly, and it's an odd topic, but personal finance. I know I know
Nice. That's so
it's an
cool.
area that we have when I have a chance to talk to my nephews or my nieces or other people in an early part of their project, early part of their career, saying, by the way, just remember that personal finance and choices that you make in that are a can be either a career enabling or a career limiting decision.
So
And
true.
you have choices that you may not recognize as a choice yet, but you can either take those choices now or later. So anyway, I get excited about that. It's an
So
interesting. I
good.
know you and I have
I
talked
love it.
about it. Joel and I have talked about it. Neil Benson and I have talked about that, and I think it's an important topic. And I've made my share of mistakes, so I'm happy to encourage others.
As we all have, I think. What's your best purchase under $100
Lately or overall?
overall? The best,
Oh,
like, yeah,
wow. I probably it may even be under $10. I got my new Surface
yeah.
my
That's cool.
new Surface laptop, and I immediately picked up
Mm-hmm.
opened the page and went to Monoprice and bought a 8 foot extension for the power cord. The
Ah,
laptop
yeah, 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 yeah.
these Surfaces
Yeah,
come
I know
in
what you
with
mean.
these
Mm-hmm.
dinky 18-inch
Short
cords on
cords,
them,
right?
and so I
Mm-hmm.
immediately bought an 8 foot
Nuts.
one because I'm always going into a conference room or something and having to do desk dive and try to find a place to get to an extension. I mean an outlet. And now I'm just like, fine, I got it. So that was an easy one. Uh,
Done the same thing. I find I'm traveling backs and forwards between the US and London now, and I have my US cords and my European cords, and all of them are long because you never know what you're going to end up with in a hotel or in a
Absolutely.
meeting
The other
room or
one
something like
is
that.
grab a pack of the little Velcro cord wraps. Do that.
Mm-hmm.
Wrap up
Mm-hmm.
your cords that
Yep.
you need or don't need. Otherwise, you get all kinds of crazy. The other one, I'm going to throw out this as a different one, is
Awesome.
a bonus one is,
Bonus.
and it's not really a purchase. It was I went to the XRM Toolbox. I went to the Fetch XML Builder page and also to the Ribbon XML ribbon editor from Duro, Tangi, and from Jonas, and made a donation because I get a tremendous amount of value out of those free tools. And I
Awesome. Yeah.
put something in the tip jar the other day for all three of those because, man, I mean, and it's almost like I'm just happy to buy them a pizza and beverage and have a good time because thank you for how much you've invested in the community and how much you've made my life easier by
So
providing these
good.
tools.
We'll make sure we put in the show notes the links to those. And yeah, everybody listening, if you've received any value from those tools, remember those guys have spent, in some cases, thousands of hours working on those projects. And so,
And
yeah,
they're not doing it for the money, believe me. They're
no,
not. But
no,
it's
no.
totally just a nice way to say thank you.
Yeah,
Go have yourself, take yourself out after work, enjoy it, and thank you for what you've done for the community.
exactly. Exactly. Scott, who do you recommend as a guest on this podcast in the future?
I've already given you my best. That was Heather Hall. The
Yeah,
other
and
Heather
she's
Hall.
been on twice.
She's been on
She's been
twice.
on
So
twice. Yeah.
I get so yeah, Heather, let's see. I try to think. So I should be able to clip out of this one. I should get a pass on this one. I can the other people that I can think of are, Vollmer, Ben Vollmer, he's on a lot of stuff, but he's also
He's been on.
he's
He's been
he's
on.
too funny. I
Yeah.
just get a kick out of him. And then one of his counterparts in the area, Jack Bender, he's hilarious. So we have a good time working together.
Okay.
But there's so
Was
many
that
people
Jack
within
Bender?
Bender, Bender. He's with Microsoft. And I just enjoy all the, the people at Clarus and Britt, there's just so many good people around. And sometimes I just like tuning in a podcast, not because necessarily the topic itself is the motivator, but sometimes I just like hearing from my friends. These are good people around.
Nice.
Matthew Anderson. I don't know if you know Matthew. He's such a good guy too. Yep. So anyway, tons of people. I shouldn't even say anybody because there's too many people to name. Anyway,
most of the ones that you have named, I've had them on the show. It's all good, but not Jack, and I actually haven't had Anderson on either. So Scott, it's been great to have you on the show. Absolute pleasure. Before you go, if people want to follow you or catch up with you online, where can they find you?
The first one would be Twitter, which is at Scott Sewell, SCOTTSEWELL, and then also on LinkedIn. And anyway, so I'm available, but I'm around. But it's been great. Man, I'm just so happy to hear from you, and I thoroughly enjoyed following your journey around the world last year.
You've been listening to the Dynamics 365 show. Please consider subscribing to the feed on any great podcast player. Your host was Business Applications MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. For show notes or to discuss anything covered on this show, please go to nz365guy.com/40. Talk soon.